Last night I watched The Conjuring: The Last Rite, and well, I love the Conjuring series, but this one, for the last entry into the series in terms of the Ed and Lorraine family, I think it definitely had its ups and downs. It's not the worst entry in the franchise, but it made me leave the theater thinking to myself, this was how they ended it. This was like their last big bang. I was severely disappointed. I mean, it's not terrible per se. It's not the worst Conjuring movie I've ever seen. It's definitely not the worst horror movie I've seen of this year. But of 2025, I would not rank it up in my horror movie year reward. That is not to say that this is the worst horror movie I've ever seen or even the worst horror movie in general. I think there were a lot of things that I really loved about it, starting with the cinematography. I think that there were some scenes where I was like, wow, that cinematography was very beautiful. Biggest part of the cinematography that I really loved was when they really showcased not Ed and Lorraine's family, but the victim's family who are being haunted the most. And you could see how the whole family started to unfold emotionally. The saddest part about that is that because that was my favorite part, they basically focused on that for a core section of the story, and then there on after completely disregarded the whole family as alone. Starting off as kind of main characters in the series, and then somehow escalating to basically background characters. I really love the dynamic of the children and the parents and how everything is going on. Just seeing the life of the family inside that house of 8 people and how they were all interacting with these paranormal activities felt really real. Their reaction felt real in the sense that they couldn't get out of the house, they couldn't afford it. And now you can see how distressing it is for the family and the kids, the position that they're forced into. Besides the cinematography, I think another strong factor that the Conjuring series always stay consistent on is the epic sound design. Their sound design, they always nail it in the head whenever you're watching it in theaters or even in a dark room in your house or your room. You could feel the eerie creepiness crawling in and building up as the tension builds up. Something about the sound design in this series has always been so playful with the franchise and the storyline. Whether it takes an object and somehow builds tension to it, or just in general walking through a hallway or down a basement, the music score and the sound design as the characters interact with the environment makes your body feel more anxious, which in turns plays a critical role in what makes a horror movie scary, is the sound design.
Are not crazy.
Throughout the movie, the pacing felt okay-ish, I would say. I think the opening to the middle act were one of the best parts. That's where all the tension and expositions were. But the ending kind of fell flat. With this last entry into the Conjuring series, what I really liked was the fact that they went back to their roots of going back to the original case files. They did that previously with the first Conjuring and the second one, but throughout the other franchises entry, they really focus more on the demonic entity like Annabelle or the Nun, which are all part of the Conjuring universe. However, in this last entry, I really enjoyed that they focus on a different case file. However, there are many scenes within the movie where I'm not sure if it's fan service or if it's connected to lore, but Annabelle pops up numerous times. I'm not quite sure how Annabelle connects. She keeps coming back. This doll just keeps coming back some way or somehow. Basically, you can just name the Conjuring series Annabelle because somehow in every movie she makes like a hidden Easter egg appearance in every shape and form. One of the worst scenes with Annabelle in it was probably when the daughter walks into the room and sees Annabelle sitting on the floor, and somehow she just shows up, and then Annabelle kind of just becomes alive. And it reminds me of a scene from It where Pennywise kind of starts running, but it's done in a very weird way because Annabelle just looks so fake and CGI. And honestly, I'm not trying to shit on the artist, but the CGI just looks terrible. And I think in a series like this, Annabelle in that kind of shape and form was more comedic than scary. Besides the major fan service, what I liked about the story was that for the audience, made us feel closer to Ed and Lorraine, but in a sad way, this will probably be the last time we would see these actors play Ed and Lorraine. At the end of the film, when they did the post credits, they talked about how Ed and Lorraine passed away. However, in the opening, they did show younger Ed and Lorraine during one of their first cases, I believe. Rumors has been said that this is also a setup for the prequel that's about to come out or that they're in the works of making. I'm not quite sure how a Conjuring TV show would work. I feel like somehow or some way they would put Annabelle or the Nun fan service into it and make it, just make it work, but I'm curious to see. Another part of this movie is that it follows two family storylines. First, you have the family of Ed and Lorraine and their daughter and her boyfriend, who his character is kind of bland in the beginning. At first, I thought he was kind of like a mischievous kind of person who was trying to use Judy. Somehow he became actually a good person, but the way they set the character up in a weird way was kind of weird. His whole script felt like he was up to some mischievous acts, asking people around about what's going on with the exorcism and whatnot. I don't know. I felt like his whole script was where it felt like his character was set up to be mischievous and use Judy. So you have that story of Ed and Lorraine and Judy and her boyfriend, but then you also have the story of this other family who are being haunted, and they're in this house, this very small house, filled with 8 people. Their story was the best story. I enjoyed that part of the movie way more, when you can see the family start off very innocent and very oblivious and blissful, right? They start off like a kind, loving family, and slowly the transition to chaos and the stress after everything, after all these paranormal incidents, I thought were very enthralling. For me, the best part of the movie, just because you can see the psychological factors of the actors unfold. Ed in the movie talks about how the demon uses that fear and basically uses it as a weapon to torment them. And you can see in their face how tormented and fearful they were. However, the movie kind of takes a downward turns and stops focusing on the act and basically just leave them to be at their torment. One of the biggest weaknesses of the movie was probably that part where they stopped focusing on the family, because there was one part of the movie where the mother-in-law apparently gets pushed down the stairs by a demon, right? And you can see the mother-in-law being carried out in a stretcher into an ambulance. But that part where she was pushed down was never shown in the movie. I would think that if I were making the movie, that would be a cool part to include into the script, because it would add on to the torment and fear and the stress of the family. However, it was more of something that we just talked about as you see the stretcher get reeled out. I think that was one of the lamest death or injury. The movie basically explains that in the beginning of the opening, the mirror that Ed and Lorraine encounter is haunted by some spirits, and Lorraine sees a spirit and somehow started to go into birth. The demon that's haunting the family is being controlled by this bigger boss demon, and that the spirits that they're seeing are basically these 3 sub-level demons who were originally haunting the land because it used to be a farm where the farmer had a wife who had an affair, and he killed her and his mom because they were hiding together, and I'm assuming he killed himself, and therefore they haunt the land now. And the only reason why these paranormal activities are starting to happen is because the family got the mirror from the opening scene, and that mirror is basically the boss demon that's controlling these spirits. Essentially, it's not really enveloped in any sense, because throughout the movie, you start seeing Annabelle and you start seeing these other demon ghost kind of situations. Like in the hospital, there's like this big white sperm looking demon who had these glowing white eyes. Another weird part of the story is that one of the OG characters from the previous Conjuring, the priest, he kind of just, I can't say the word, but he kind of just deletes himself because he was in this holy religious place and he got possessed, I'm assuming, and just starts deleting himself. That was kind of a weird way to end things off. When I was in the theater last night, there were definitely people who were definitely scared. A lot of the build-up for these scares were so predictable. It's not bad in a sense, but it's very classic of The Conjuring to be where the light turns off, turns it back on, turns it off, turns it back on, turns it off, and then turn it on, and then the demon pops up. There were some scenes where I thought was really creative, such as some parts of the movie were really dark, and you really had to peer into the shadows to really see the monster, which I really liked, because it made you feel like you were actually in the basement with the characters. I thought that was a really cool experience, even though I said that it is predictable to know that if you're in the basement and the music's building up, you can sense that there's a jump scare coming up soon. Another thing that I was really disappointed in was that it has a rated R rating, but there were some scenes that in real life is kind of gory, but the movie didn't push it to the point of goriness. Point where Judy's boyfriend's leg is being held down by a mirror, being dragged, kind of degloved, his whole, but essentially in the movie it just looks like his skin is being scraped as if it was like a paper cut. Conjuring series has always been it has never been a gory series, and I'm not saying that it should be, but I think that there are some scenes that are truly violent in the script, but it is not showcased in the visuals. I think the scare factor was not really the main focus of the movie. Yes, it is a core component of the Conjuring series. However, the main component of the Conjuring series has always been the Ed and Lorraine family and their relationship, and how using these cases made them grow stronger. And in this movie, you kind of see that relationship with them and their daughter, and how the case brought them even stronger together and closer. But I would say that that is the corniest downside of the movie and its ending, because the way the movie ended was essentially this. They got the mirror from the opening scene, and throughout the movie, Lorraine was telling Judy, you can't fight these spirits, just shut it out, just don't look at it, just close your eyes and don't look at it. And at the end of the movie, she's like, Judy, no, look at it, don't run away from it. And and the family puts their hand on the mirror and basically blasts the evil mirror demon away. And unfortunately, you don't even see the demon mirror as much. It doesn't make clear what the demon of the mirror is, besides the spirits that's haunting the house. The demon in the mirror kind of makes some subtle appearances, but it's not as prominent as Annabelle or even the nun in the previous franchise. How Annabelle, I felt like, had more screen time than the demon in the mirror, who was the main boss. Another really violent scene in the movie was when the kids try to throw away the mirror. The garbage men pick it up, and I'm not even sure if it's even garbage approved to even do that, but essentially the garbage man picks it up and then throws it into the garbage truck crushes it up, but then the kid started feeling like there's glass in her throat or belly or something, and then she starts vomiting and it starts vomiting out glass. And I felt like that is such a core moment of violence that could have been emphasized a little bit more, but the next day she kind of just recovers from it with a little scratch on her lip. Let's talk about the makeup. I think that there's some scenes where the makeup looked really incredible, and there are some scenes where the makeup just looks like the same makeup you would see on your local haunted house character actor. The guy with the axe, his makeup was done really well, but something about him was just not as frightening. I think that the only part when he was frightening was when he was sitting in the shadows, but when he's moving around and chasing down Lorraine, it somewhat felt kind of unrealistic because this is not a serial killer, it's a spirit. Another thing I want to note is the effects and visuals. I felt like the effects in some scenes were good. Overall, the visuals were nice. The image, what I was looking at was really nice film. It looked very filmic and very vintage. There are some scenes that were really creepy and very cinematic. However, there are some visual effect scenes, such as blood clogging up the sink or Annabelle becoming big and human-like or monster-like, that felt very CGI-like. It felt like it was worse than AI even. That was how bad it was. It felt muddy, it felt so pristine, and I think that it's not because the artist's fault, but I think that just Annabelle and turning her into like this monster, robotic, kind of lifelike structure just kind of killed the pacing of the movie. The choice for that was kind of weird and really felt like fan service. For me and a lot of the audience, it was like more of a laughing scene more than a scary scene. A core theme of the movie that I observed was the fact that you should not run away from what you fear or what scares you. And if you confront them, then it won't be that scary and you would actually overcome and defeat it. Another core theme of the movie of how these cases makes you stop running away or makes you even stronger with your family or yourself. It talks about how Ed and Lorraine ran away from the first case because they were scared. But at the end of the movie, they stuck through and defeated the entity, which I thought was a good theme, but it felt like it's a theme that has been used before. I think that they just wrapping it around this whole new umbrella of having a family now. The whole daughter family thing, I thought they incorporated it in a very well done way because it felt like Lorraine was passing the torch down to her daughter. What I found to be corny was the fact that the demon was defeated because they didn't run away. And I thought that that was such an interesting concept because Ed was like, get the book, and he had a heart attack and whatnot. All for them to just finally defeat the demon if they just touched their hands at the mirror. And I just thought that was ridiculous. Somehow they just realized that at the end. But I guess these things, when you are faced with them, teach you something new and brings you close together. That was my review of The Conjuring: The Last Rites. Let me know what you think. I overall thought the movie was decent. It's not the greatest horror movie I saw this year, but it's not the worst. I think it's not the best entry into the franchise, but for the last one, I also didn't think it was the best way to end off franchise. But I feel like knowing the series, they're probably going to milk it some more. If I were to give it a final score, I would probably rate it probably a 5.4 out of 10. It's not the best, but I thought there were some things I really liked, like the cinematography and the sound design, but some things that I didn't like were just probably mostly the overall story and the corny ending, I guess. But I thought the acting was really good from all the characters. I thought they all did a very well done job. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this review, let me know what you think about the movie. Another movie you want me to review or watch or explain next, let me know. I'll see you then. Bye-bye. Have a good day.